Hi, my name is George Shaler, and I'm the board president of the Justice Information Resource Network, or JIRN. This episode is another in a series of interviews that JIRN is doing called Justice Insights, Conversations with the SACs. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Kelly Officer from the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, the Oregon Statistical Analysis Center, that recently released a report titled 2024 Felony Convictions Report for Oregon that we'll learn more about in a moment. Before we get started, I'd like Kelly to let the viewers know her role at the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission.
Thank you, George. I am the research director at the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission and have led our team of researchers that has had the great opportunity to grow a little bit since about 2021. And I am the Oregon Statistical Analysis Center director in that role.
Thanks, Kelly. So let's jump in. So, how did this report come about, and what agency or entity funded this project?
So I'll start with the funding. This was funded by BJS, Bureau of Justice Statistics, through our SJS grant, State Justice Statistics, or SAC
Yep.
grant. So we were pleased to be awarded the funds to do this project. There was really a couple different motivations for the project. We've had, as all states have had, a lot of big changes since the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hmm.
Also, a couple pretty substantial criminal law sentencing changes. And so really a need to provide a summary overview of those changes, a little bit of myth busting along the way,
Hmm.
and a kind of an understanding of, hey, this component is that criminal law change. This is more hasn't really returned to pre-COVID levels for probably a myriad of reasons there. And then a higher level summary document so that folks that aren't working in the criminal justice system every day, like we all are, our decision makers and policy makers could have a document to access that's accessible and understandable and at kind of that higher summary level, not as much in the details for that audience.
Okay. So, what were your research methods for this report, and or what data did you use to compile your results?
Yeah, our data, we have a great relationship with our Oregon Department of Corrections,
Yeah.
a couple different divisions within that big agency, but specifically the research division there. A long history of data sharing with that. And so a lot of the data collection and data cleaning and data definitions, we rely heavily on our partners there. So we have prison admission information, local control information, and then in Oregon, felony probation supervision sentences are all entered into one data system managed by the Department of
Right.
Corrections. So we have a single source of those felony probation sentences, which is incredibly useful. And
Hmm.
that's the key to this report. So having that administrative data and working with the folks at the Department of Corrections, then we are able to pull together the trends that we had here. We've done a lot of other projects with this specific data that's available. It really goes into the details, right? Prison population changes, and this little sentencing change makes this change on this date. Really digging into the details. And so here we were pulling it up to that higher level to look at more of those summary measure longer term trends from that data source.
Oh, great, Kelly. Thank you. So, what are some of the report's key findings?
Sure. Yes, there were several within that. You'll see on that front page, we love a good line chart. And so really, again, for those policymakers and decision makers that need kind of that one key takeaway, and really, some folks will read a whole report, some folks will just remember some of those key images, right?
Hmm. Sure.
And so, yeah, having that line chart there just shows, and really, we're showing just the magnitude over the year, trends over time for what that looks like. But there
Hmm.
were some pretty important components here that we really wanted folks, to remember, which is
Hmm.
that felony convictions peaked in 2016 and 2017 with just under 16,000 a year. not too many folks are surprised by a significant drop in 2020. However, that
Sure.
drop has sustained through
Wow.
2024, which is not fully explained by, somewhat explained by some changes in criminal law, but not fully. So a really important component here for our decision makers and policymakers to take away
Hmm.
in that report. We have had some pretty substantial criminal law changes for drug possession, which in 2016 and 2017 was at the felony level. And those law changes did drop that first to the misdemeanor level, then decriminalizing. We're back at the misdemeanor level, but they are no longer at that felony level. So
Hmm.
for a drop in drug crime convictions, we can that makes sense, follows exactly what the criminal law changes did. However, we'd have substantial drops for property and other crime types that are not explained by those criminal law
Yeah.
changes and are still significantly below those pre-COVID levels, which is important. And then finally, the sentence types. Again, for policymakers looking at those prison, local control, and probation sentences, all three are down substantially. Prison intakes have not
Wow.
returned
That's
to
great.
pre-COVID levels. And so, having that information in a concise document and for folks to absorb and hopefully remember that information is what we were going for with the work here.
Well, that's great. Those are exciting developments in Oregon. So what happens next? What policy or practice changes do you anticipate coming from this report?
Sure, this, was really a higher level summary measure piece, and
Hmm.
so we're not kind of diving into a specific policy here.
Sure.
But I think Oregon and other states are in the same boat. We're embarking on some challenging fiscal times. And so for our policymakers, our decision makers to understand what's happening in the criminal justice system, to be able to access and have the necessary data and have that data inform the tough decisions they need to make,
Sure.
is our hope with this document. The majority of folks with a felony conviction are sentenced to probation. There are, ideally there are treatment and wraparound services with that particular sentence. However, in tight budget times, those dynamics can
Hmm.
change.
Yep.
And if difficult budget decisions are being made, having the data to understand what that population looks like, what the needs are, and what the trends are going forward. Um, Again, there was not a sentencing change for property and other
Hmm.
felony convictions. And so if the assumption is those are going to sustain at that lower level, you're going to have to give that a harder look. Drug convictions, sure, that criminal change has happened and that makes more sense. So understanding the dynamics of the population and informing some hard decisions is what we are looking at in this next year in Oregon.
Well, Kelly, thanks so much. This is a tremendous report, and I think it's a great resource for the state of Oregon and serves as a model for other states as well. So I want to thank you so much.